Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Cam McKinley-Rodgers. I'm currently zooming in from Liberty in Port Macquarie. I'm Biripi country here. We're here to have a brief organic discussion on men's behaviour change programs. So I'm lucky enough to work here within the men's behaviour change programs in Liberty. And I'm joined by Paul Reinbott and Wendy Atkinson. But I'm going to jump out and let you guys introduce yourselves, if that's all right.
So I'm Wendy Atkinson. I'm the coordinator of the Engage to Change Men's Behaviour Change Program in Kempsey, Nambucca Heads and Coffs Harbour at the moment. I'm coming to you from Dunghutti country, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land I'm on today, and elders past, present and emerging. We run programs in Kempsey, Nambucca and Coffs, which I just said, but my history is I worked in women's DV services for 10 years in the Hunter and in the homelessness sector, and was moving up the coast, and this job came up. So I've been in men's behaviour change now for 3 years, done the grad cert, and yeah, it's a different space. It's a very different space, but it's a very rewarding and interesting space to be in, I must say. Paul?
Yep. So I'm Paul. I'd like to also acknowledge traditional custodians of the land we're all meeting on today. So I'm on beautiful Dunghutti country. I'm a facilitator with Engage to Change, the Men's Behaviour Change Program. I facilitate in Kempsey and the Nambucca Valley. I've also been lucky enough to observe in Port Macquarie with Cam, and up in Coffs with Wendy, which was a privilege. And I also am a caseworker with the Fixed Address program, which I think Cam will go into a little bit more. We'll talk about a bit more later. Yeah. So that's basically my story. I work for Kempsey families.
Thank you, Wendy and Paul. So I just think, for the purposes of the discussion today, we're really kind of hoping to break down, or at least go into a little bit of detail without going down a rabbit hole, of what is a men's behaviour change program, what are they, who do they support and how. So again, it's designed to be a bit of a free-flowing discussion space between the three of us that hopefully will illuminate people who are working in allied agencies or services about what this is. So if we want to refer into one, what does that mean? So if I can kind of put to either Wendy or to Paul, what do you feel that the aims and objectives of men's behaviour change programs are from where you sit?
So much. So really the aims of the program are to keep women and children safe, or provide another area of risk management and safety for women and children who are living in violence or have lived in violence or been experienced violence, domestic violence or family violence, and to, it's a big job, but to try and bring about some sort of change within men's belief systems and their traditional ideas that lead them into violent behaviour, and also look at helping men take responsibility and be accountable for that behaviour, and manage their emotions, really, or at least have some level of emotional regulation within their relationships and within themselves. But our main focus is around the safety of women and children and victims of domestic violence. And we have an in-program women and children's advocate who provides that support for the women and children. I know both Cam and Paul's program have that as well. And that's So the men are told right from the beginning, or almost in the initial contact, at the initial contact, that it is a requirement of them to give us the details of their ex-partner, current partner, depending on the space between the relationship and whether there's children or whether they're still having contact with that ex-partner. We'll reach out to them and provide support if they want it. We'll offer that support. So for me, having worked with women and children for 10 years, I can't turn that off either. It'll stop hopefully. It's really important to me that connection and that focus is really zeroes in on women and children and provides that with the collaboration of other services. So reaching out to lots of other services within that whole case management and case support for the woman and child, as well as giving that support to men through fixed address. They are also supported in whatever they need to be supported, because that also takes the load off and possibly decreases some of that violent behaviour. Sorry, I hope I didn't talk too long.
No, that was really great. That was really great. When you said, Paul, my understanding of how you work, you mentioned before at the start of our conversation that you have a foot in two camps or in two different program spaces. Is there anything that you want to add to what Wendy was saying about what the objectives are and how do we do that? Wendy spoke a bit about referrals in from other agencies or collaborative working with other agencies. Can you kind of add to that at all?
Yeah, and I thanks, Cam. I'd like to reinforce what Wendy said, that women and children's safety, that's really at the apex of both fixed address and engaged to change. Not only the safety, but their dignity as well. So I will see clients and we sort of assess with the men where they're sitting in that journey, like Wendy was talking about, that whether they're ready to take responsibility or accountability for the violence they have used. Sometimes men aren't really ready to start the engaged to change, the actual men's group work. And so that's where fixed address will step in with a one-on-one case management style to actually look at how we can assist or support that man in getting group ready. So it could be working with other services with drug and alcohol, could be with housing, assisting with housing, it could be with mental health, it can be just with linking in with a psychologist. So it's really supporting that man if he's ready to make that change in his behaviour and ready to stop using violence or causing hurt and harm to those around him.
Thanks for that, Paul. So when we're talking about assessing readiness, it's one of the many things, I guess, that we're really assessing in the men's behaviour change space. So if it's all right with Wendy and Paul, I might talk to a little bit about the commonalities of both engaged to change, because we, as Wendy was saying, we run the programs, very much the same program across the Mid-North Coast region. The common feature of a men's behaviour change program is the assessment phase. So we meet with men in a one-to-one setting to not only do risk assessment, but assess needs, and motivation, as Paul was saying. So where they're at, we're meeting them where they're at. We're doing this in a respectful, safe, yet a direct way. So it's an ethical approach, but it's a space where we're acknowledging them as a person as well. We're modelling the type of behaviours that we hope to start seeing in the clients that we're engaging with. Both Wendy and Paul have talked a little bit about engaged to change and fixed address. So these are the names of the programs, the two different types of men's behaviour change interventions that we do offer here on the Mid-North Coast. Paul, can I kind of throw back to you just very briefly to talk a bit about, you mentioned fixed address being a space where men might not be group ready. How do you feel from your point of view, having being a group facilitator versus case management? What are the differences from your point of view?
I think basically, that the man is the client, the man is ready to make that, ready to explore himself and his ethics and his beliefs and question why he might have used violence, why he's using violence. When they're ready to explore that, that's when I think they're group ready. And when they have like a place to live, housing, essential things like housing, and their mental health, they have a mental health care plan. Or if they, do need assistance, like I was saying before, with drug and alcohol counselling, say, there's no use really them beginning that journey of looking at their behaviour or wanting to change unless they're in a mind safe place to start that change. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you saying is that capacity building. So it's no good them coming into group if they're not really in the headspace or capable of kind of sitting in that space and kind of working on change. Wendy, can I ask you were talking a bit about how our programs support women and children through partner support or women and children's advocates across the region. Would you mind expanding for obviously the people who are watching the video, what that means in terms of safety for them? How does this work in relation to how we all engage with the male participant, the user of violence?
Yeah, can I just say as well, just going back to what Paul said, sorry, some of that readiness may not be, for the men, may not be about their drug and alcohol, or, a lot of that is very important, all that stuff to have them at a stable level, but also they need to be, and being ready to take responsibility, to be, also not to be pointing the finger and blaming other people for how what their behaviour has manifested into, which is really common and a default position for a lot of guys. So a lot of that assessment process is working through that and trying to break that default position of just, oh, she did this, so I did that. She pressed my button, so I did that. And there's that kind of stuff, if still there and they're going into group, is really difficult to deal with when you've got a lot of other men who are ready in there to take responsibility, and you've got one sort of still going, oh, but she did it. Anyway, I just wanted to say that.
The difference between contributing factors and central drivers to the use of abusive behaviours.
Yeah.
For clarification.
So part of the role of the Women and Children's Advocate is to provide a risk and safety update every week to the group facilitators, and that provides the facilitators with a space to find out what's happening in the relationship without the participant of the group and the perpetrator of the violence kind of knowing, even though they know we're talking to the Women and Children's Advocate and she is talking to the partner, ex-partner, victim of violence, we still have a place weekly before group where we can assess, manage and mitigate risk and go into the group with information without letting the men know and adapt the group around that information. So it's really helpful to have the women and children's input into how we manage the group, really, and how we manage the risk within the group and within those relationships and within those families. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, really well. So it's that kind of, we're kind of taking on that information, kind of keeping it in the back of our mind. With all of the interventions, be it one-to-one case management, or as you're saying, Wendy, in that group environment, we've got to be really mindful as men's behaviour change practitioners that everything that we do increases safety for partners, former partners and children, so that our intervention doesn't put her at an increased risk.
Yes.
So it's a really subtle balance there, isn't it, of the kind of questions that we might be asking.
Yeah, and a really sort of almost a tricky one for new facilitators to learn, or observers, or to learn about that strict confidentiality within that space and within the whole program around the women and children's safety, because she might be telling us something and then we go into the group knowing he knows he's done that something, and if we let on that we know from her, that could actually raise the risk for her. Definitely, we're looking at that real risk of heightened risk for her, really.
Mm.
So it's being really mindful of what you say, when you say it, how you say it, and it's a real skill set. And I've done facilitation. I don't do a lot of it, but I really value the facilitators and their skill set within that space. I think it's a real skill.
And then that information from the Women and Children's Advocate, like Wendy's saying, also informs the content that we can deliver to the men. But yeah, that's a great relationship that you can have with the Women and Children's Advocate to have that information. It's crucial. Yeah.
Yeah. Just for example, we had a guy in group when I was facilitating who was, saying all the right things. We did cyber violence and cyber stalking and harassment, and the ex-partner had told us after we'd done the cyber stuff, and he said, no, I didn't do any of that. She had told us that he had put a fake profile on Tinder of her and put lots of damaging photos and information about her, and she had to struggle to and send it to all her family and friends, and she struggled to get rid of that, and it was a huge thing for her, and as it would be. And so the next week we went in and we upped the cyberbullying stuff, and we did more about it and the damaging impacts that has on women and children and people. And so that informed, although he maybe didn't admit it, he still got lots more information about the impacts of that on his family.
So again, what I'm hearing you both saying is that this subtlety and being able to be responsive as co-facilitators and men's behaviour change practitioners. So we're hearing this information, we're kind of working out how we can best package this and then work in a meaningful yet safe and ethical way. I can think about times that when we've been engaging with men who've used abusive, controlling, violent behaviours who happen to be dads. So again, similar kind of, if we're getting information, either a disclosure made by a partner or from a partner or from perhaps a partner agency under an information sharing exchange, that there's behaviours that are directly impacting children. I can think of times where we've spent a little bit more time talking about the use of violence as a parenting choice. And again, that kind of empathy growing space for men who are parents. What does this mean for your child or children? What's their experience of dad's behaviours? So acknowledging that the children are victim survivors in their own right, and that their experience of dad's violence may be very similar to what their mum might be experiencing from dad, but it's different as well. So I can think of times where we've not adapted, but we've just spent a little bit more time talking about those things, and in the hope that it is. I kind of think of that kind of planting seeds kind of analogy. You might not disclose or give anything away to say that he's doing that, but it might be something that sort of stays with him as we move through that program.
I think just one of the really important things about the Men's Behaviour Change Program is that it presents, or it can present in the facilitation for the men, an equal relationship between men and women. And we do a lot of talking about men as parents and why that role is should be just as equal as the women's role as parents, and the responsibility should also be the same. So that because often men will say, oh, well, she was looking after the kids, it's her job, so it's not my fault. So there's a lot of subtleties around those traditional roles and presenting an equal relationship.
So challenging those outdated, rigid, gender normative kind of, like you were saying, those roles. So for those who might not know, in the MBC, or the Men's Behaviour Change Program space, it's generally facilitated by a male and a female worker. And that kind of also demonstrates that equality in that space, doesn't it?
Yeah,
It's really important.
should
I
do.
feel it's really important for the facilitators, to show that balance, to show that respectful relationship between, the female and the male facilitators.
Yeah.
And for the benefit, I guess, of this panel discussion and for folks watching it, as co-facilitators in that space, we have a really great debrief session with observers where, as Wendy said, it should do. Because there's times, we're human beings, we don't get it right 100% of the time. This is a really great space for facilitators to kind of take a deeper dive on how we do what we do. Might there be a certain type of language used or not picked up in that space? So we can again put that in our top pocket. Next week can come in with a different kind of angle or supporting your facilitator, your co-facilitator, in a way that's respectful and again, powerful. I find it's a fascinating space, and no two groups are ever the same. As with no two clients are ever the same in a one-to-one case managed setting, I imagine too. Can I put it to both you, Wendy and Paul, just we've got a few more minutes. How do you feel, so talked a little bit about how partner agencies or other services fit in. How in your experience, whether in group work interventions or in one-to-one case manage, how do you feel that you work with other agencies and community that increases safety for women and children, but also too safety capacity for men who have used or might be using violence?
You want to go first, Paul?
I'll let you go first, Wendy.
Okay. Well, it's really important for us to collaborate with other services, especially for the safety, the increased safety of the women and children, and for the work with the men. So we work very closely with corrections around referrals and ongoing work with the men. We work with DCJ around the family, with the women and children, and often the men, and all the other services, mental health, housing, it's like a full holistic service. So if we're not working with other services, we're not getting the full deal for these people. So it's a collaborative effort. We work very closely with drug and alcohol, education, everything. So we might have we might have a woman with children who has left town, wants to come back, wants to try and get the kids enrolled in school, can't get them in, they can't get back into the school they went into. So our Women and Children's Advocate will advocate with her, go with her to the services, we'll talk with the services. Look, if we didn't have that collaborative effort, we couldn't run the service. So, the referral pathways are all there. We've built the program on the shoulders of all the other services and us, really. So without them, it just wouldn't work.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate that. Yeah, community corrections, even New South Wales Police, DCJ, like you're saying, but even like for me, Lifetime Connect in Nambucca and Maxwell, you develop a special connection with them. In Barraville with Mimi House, some Aboriginal corporations, you develop really good connections and you actually have the same goals and you're there to support each other. And they're really special connections.
It's really lovely to hear you both say that. And I'm a massive fan of collaboration because we can't do this work on our own. We can't, as you said, Wendy, they don't get the full deal. They don't get the whole package of support. We talk about a whole of family response, and that really does take a whole of community response. Because as we know that when we're working and engaging with men, the women's support and the children's support is not contingent on the man staying in a program with us. And quite often we're still supporting women and children after the program is completed, or even if the man hasn't stayed with us, we're still in that connection with them and working alongside other agencies to really, capitalise on any of the gains that we might have made with the men, but also to increasing and reinforcing those kind of effective, safe measures and confidence and dignity of women and children. Yeah, we wouldn't be able to do that without the support of community.
Other DV services as well are always useful.
Yeah, we do. We borrow and exchange lots of great ideas. It helps us to grow and develop continually, doesn't it? I can't think of anything else, and I believe we might be coming close to time. Express my gratitude. I love being in this space with you both and learning from you.
Yes, thanks, Cam.
What we do.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Cam. Thanks, Wendy.
Yeah, thank you.